Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be week 3 of my reading challenge for February, which is 1 week, 1 shelf. So every week I pick up a different shelf in my little mug, and that's the only shelf I'm allowed to read the books from-ish. Since all my books are divided by genre, each shelf is a different genre, it means that I'm stuck reading that one genre throughout the whole week. And so far we did classics and hard sci-fi. This week we shall read Shelf 13, which is nonfiction. Oh, that's gonna be rough. Let me show you that one because it's at the top. So shelf 13 is this one right here, which is my nonfiction shelf. I tend to read nonfiction a lot as audiobooks from my library just because it's easier for me to go through nonfiction, I feel like, as audiobooks, and the waiting lists are shorter. But as you can see, I still have a decent collection here, so let me grab a couple from here to try and commit to for the week. I know I have this one on my waiting list in my library. Maybe I do have it. I might have time because I do need at least one audiobook for this challenge. And then which one do I want to read? I read some of these, not all of them, clearly. That one is a really good one if you're looking for one. I think I'm gonna go with this one. I really want to read that. So that's definitely one for the week. I did very poorly with physical books last week, but maybe this week won't be as bad. Anything else I can read that could be a good, easy read? Maybe that one too? Okay. Let me just check if I can find some also on my library website because, like I was mentioning, I do tend to go through at least one audiobook a week. And I do have one that I know for a fact. I have been on a waiting list for literally forever. And yes, I can put it as the next one I'm reading, even though there are like hundreds of people waiting. Damn, I've been on that waiting list for a year at least. So let me check what else I can read. Okay, so I definitely will not be able to get that one as an audiobook, but I will keep it as a backup for a physical book. So the first book I am hoping to read this week is going to be this one, which is Thinking Fast and Slow, which this has been on so many lists of, you know, best nonfiction to read. And like I said, I've been on the waiting list for at least a year. There's always like hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get their hands on that one. I believe I got that one as a used bookstore, in a used bookstore. So you can probably find this somewhere used. If I remember correctly, this one was about 2 different ways that we make a decision, the way we think. So I have been curious to read it, hence me owning the book. It's been on my shelf for at least 2 years. So this is a good part of this challenge. I'm reading the books that I own, or at least I'm trying. And then I have been also wanting to read this one for the longest time, and it is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And this book is about, is it a neurologist? And it's a bunch of little short stories about the stories of patients basically with some neurological disorders and how it's affecting your brain. The brain is a very powerful thing, and when it's not doing well, it can really affect us. And so I'm assuming this story about the man who mistook his wife for a hat. So since there are short stories like this, I feel like it might make it easier for me to go through it. I feel like last week I failed royally with physical books, so I'm hoping that this way I will be more motivated, since each short story is like 10-20 pages, so it shouldn't be too hard. And the book per se is about just under 250 pages, so I can definitely read this in a week. And this one as an audiobook or physical book if I prefer that. Oh, someone wrote in it. Okay, so I'm assuming someone took notes. That is weird. See, that's the way you know I bought this book used. This one is just under 500 pages. I never noticed that. Okay, so those are my 2 main books, and if I have time for another physical book, I might pick this one up, which is Outliers, the Story of Success, which I believe, if I understand the back, I believe this one is about obviously outliers, but like what's that expression? Survivor bias? I know I have it wrong, but we tend to For example, Bill Gates were like, oh, you know, he dropped out of college and he made it, so if I drop out of college, I will also make it and become a billionaire. You're obviously seeing, you know, the one person that made it type of thing. So I believe this might be the topic, which I think is fascinating. So I have one more audiobook. Well, I do have a couple more, but one more that for sure I will have time for, and it is Dear Girls by Ali Wong, which technically it's not on my shelf. Am I really following my challenge? Probably not. But I know I will have time to read more than one as an audiobook, or at least attempt to. So I have that one too, and it's part of my Goodreads reading challenge for the year. And I'm like number 1 on the waiting list, so I might have time to actually get to that one. Plus it's like 6 hours long, so I can easily listen to that one in a couple days. I have a couple more, but I think that at this point it should end the TBR, because really it's only a week. I tend to get overly ambitious with my TBRs. I'm like, I have time to read all the books, and then I really don't. So the first 2 books I am starting with shall be these 2, and I will update you throughout the week so we can see if I am winning or failing this challenge. Don't hesitate to let me know in the comment section if you have read these books and what you thought about them. I feel like a lot of people have read that one, so you might have an opinion, or also leave me comments letting me know your favorite nonfiction, the last one you've read, type of thing, because I'm always looking for more. Time for an update. We are Wednesday, and I wanted to let you know how things are going for me. I did finish one book. Not the one I was supposed to finish, of course. I finished Dear Girls by Ali Wong, which was it a winner? I think so, in the Goodreads Choice Awards. So it's part of my reading challenge this year to read all the winners and some, you know, runner-ups. And I wanted to read that one. It was the backup for another one we're going to talk in a second. Humor can be so difficult, but I had seen the author in a few different interviews. I know she co-wrote a show I like, and I thought I was going to enjoy myself, but I didn't know anything about the whole book. But it's called Dear Girls, and it's essentially a letter to her daughter, and there's a lot of it that's How I Met Your Dad type of thing, which was not interesting. And okay, the bits that were interesting were how she explained how hard it was for her as a non-white female comedian, and those bits were definitely interesting more than funny. And then a lot of the book was kind of meh, and some of it was kind of bad, and I feel terrible saying that, because, you know, it's a humor book, you're supposed to find it funny, but at the same time it's nonfiction, it's her life. So I am starting to resent reading those books, even though sometimes I find some that I really love. Very often I just don't. So that was that. Let's pretend that didn't happen. Now, the book I was struggling with, Thinking Fast and Slow, which, wow, is it boring to listen to it as an audiobook. It's also not really recommended. When you get the audiobook from your library or something, they were giving me also the PDF. So I've been listening to it while reading the book, because you kind of need to visually see a lot of the information. So that kind of ruined my audiobook thing, which is why I kept reading the other one instead. I'm about 22-25% into it, and I am so bored, which I don't know if it's because of the narrator. It sounds like a class that has been given by like a really old dude, and some of the information is interesting. That's the worst part, but I can't find myself wanting to listen and read this like at all. So that really, really sucks. I thought I was going to like it just because so many people have read the book. So if you have, although my week will be probably done once the video is up, obviously, but let me know, because I'm not even sure I'm going to finish this or continue this at this point, because I am resenting having to. But on the bright side, I did unpause another book, and I just got it today, so I'm going to start listening to it, and it is Invisible Women. And I have mentioned in one of my last videos what it was about, essentially. Did I mention in the intro of this one too? A ton of things basically in the data world that just don't include women. And I am super pumped to get to that one. It's also actually part of the reading challenge for the Goodreads Choice Awards, so very excited for that one. Bad news. I have yet to start this book. I swear, I have had no free time to sit down and read, and it's very bad timing with this challenge, but at the same time, I guess it has been forcing me to find time to at least listen to audiobooks. So fingers crossed, I will find some time for this one, or at least I will force myself to find time for the audiobook, because I'm very, very excited. So I will see you in a few more days, and hopefully I find some time. I'm terrible as a booktuber, just saying. So this is the end of week 3 of 1 week, 1 shelf for my challenge for February. And this week we're reading, again, nonfiction, as you already know. I wasn't very consistent with my updates. Life have been pretty insane, but I do have an update to do. First off, I had finished one book, which we had mentioned, Dear Girls. I don't think I went any further in the other book I was going through, Thinking Fast and Slow, because I'm currently 26% into it. I just can't do it as an audiobook. It's just not going to happen. So I still have the physical book. Hopefully one day I will power through. It's being returned very soon to library, so that's definitely not happening on my phone. But actually the other audiobook I had mentioned, I'm gonna keep it for last because I have so much to say. But I hadn't started this one. I finally have. I am only 80 pages into it. I'm a little annoyed that I didn't have more time to get to it. In my defense, I didn't expect to have to go through the other one as a physical book, so it kind of just, you know, made it impossible to start it until like midweek. I do absolutely want to continue. I'm enjoying it. So far, yes, I am enjoying it. Now, the important book in this video, and even though I'm only 55% into it, I'm telling you right now, this is also going to be a new favorite book. So 2 weeks in a row, I find a new favorite book. I'm completely cheating since, once again, I did not finish that one yet. But I have so much to say. Literally, I was only listening to the intro, the prologue, what do they call it? It was just the introduction, I think, and it was almost an hour, so. But right there, I knew it was going to be a favorite book. My mind is blown. I am mad, but fascinated by all the info. Let me go through a little bit of it and prepare yourself for a few rants. Essentially, I'm gonna say that a lot. I don't know, I've noticed whenever I film these videos, I tend to repeat the same thing over and over again. She starts by saying that the gender data gap is what the topic is about, right? And we hear about some of that information almost as a joke now. The fact that, for example, in offices, the temperature is always way too cold for women, which or for example, you could think in the grocery store, some women cannot grab anything from the higher shelves, and that stuff is like annoying, but it's not life-threatening. So it's like, whatever, not that big of a deal, I guess. But with that gender data gap, some of the stuff is life-threatening and is affecting women. We can just think about the famous symptoms for heart attack. Those are the ones only for men. Women have completely different symptoms, and very often women are misdiagnosed. For us, it might be like less the pain in the arm, more like nausea or something. And I didn't even know these things. I was mentioning basically that there are 3 main things that she wanted to discuss in the book. The fact that our concerns are basically the female body, women unpaid care burden, and male violence against women. And these are the 3 important things because we are living in a world that was built around male data. And she was saying how it's not something that is done deliberately or maliciously. It's just the way it is because men are not the ones going through it, so they just completely don't realize these things. And she quoted Simone de Beauvoir saying, men confuse their point of view for the absolute truth. And it's definitely something that you get to see throughout the book. One of the stories she talked about is something that I could relate to, and I'm sure a lot of you could also. She was mentioning how she dated a man who told her that she could not see the world objectively because she was seeing it through her eyes as a feminist, which doing so, he was completely failing to realize he was doing the exact same thing, yet he was seeing himself as objective and the one that had common sense. I mean, I've definitely had guys trying to explain periods to me, which is always a little bit weird. Oh, he was also a libertarian. Is that how you say that in English? Coincidence? I think not. But again, it's not certainly something that is done maliciously, like she was saying, or deliberately. It's just that these things are things that men forget because they don't live them. She was mentioning, for example, at Google for a real long time, they didn't even have a parking spot for pregnant women because no one high enough had ever been pregnant. So it's not like trying to purposely hate pregnant women, you know what I mean? They just didn't think about it. And that's something that is very, very common. All of this was literally just in the intro. I kept just finding myself wanting take notes. And even when I was on the go, I kept doing it on my phone because I thought it was super interesting. One theme that was coming back quite often in that first part that I did read was the fact that what seemed objective was actually highly a male bias. Another example she was mentioning was in the UK, the banknotes. It was 5 white men that were on there because the criterias were something that could not include anyone else, and it seemed objective to be like, oh, it needs to be, you know, this, that. One of the things, for example, being not being controversial, but a famous person back in the day could not have been not controversial as a woman or a person of color, you know what I mean? And it was also the fact that very often there was the practice of attributing to men discoveries by women. So those were all things that were preventing any woman to be on banknotes, even though it seemed like a very objective, you know, criteria. So that is just kind of mind-blowing because you know, you're so used to living in this world that you don't even realize it even as a woman sometimes. So if this is something that is interesting to you, I highly recommend the book. Like I said, I'm only 55% into it, but I find myself just pausing whatever I'm doing and just being like mind blown as I'm listening to the audiobook. So far, I would give it 5 stars, but once again, I am not done. I do have it for a couple more days, so I will have time to go through my last week of, you know, 1 week, 1 shelf. And after that, I will be finishing it because fantastic, absolutely mind-blowing. I hope I explained it kind of okay. We will blame it on me speaking le croissant because it can be very difficult to explain my thoughts. So, yeah, fantastic. I feel like this whole week was kind of a struggle in the beginning. I mean, we kind of saw the first 2 books, not so great. This one is good, but this one is just amazing, literally amazing. Cannot recommend this enough. And I need to get the physical copy. And I mean, the whole week was worth it just to discover this book. So I think we're gonna end this week this way on a good note, kind of, right? Didn't finish any book, no. See, I'm literally forgetting the first book I finished. I finished 1 book and somewhat DNF'd one. I will be finishing this one and definitely will be finishing this one as soon as I can. So I think overall I didn't do too badly. Let me know what your favorite nonfiction books are because I want to know anything in this video that caught your eye. Maybe this one. Let me know actually if you have read the other one and I need to like push through and it's gonna get so much better, or maybe the physical book is better. Let me know. So this is gonna be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, even though I feel like 1 week I'm realizing it's way too quick to do those videos. Like I would probably have to only force myself to finish 1 book a week, but that's kind of just defying the purpose of having a real challenge, right? So I think in the future, which I kind of already knew I was going to do that instead, I'm probably just going to do like 1 week, 1 shelf, like once a month type of thing. So I have time to catch up instead of having like 50 books that I'm halfway through at the end of the month. But 1 more week, we can do this. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting the other ones that I've done on the screen. I highly recommend you check those out, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye.